On a clear fall day, when the sun was shining brightly and the leaves of the trees were turning all shades of yellow and red, a 12-year-old boy named Brian decided to go for a walk in the woods with his friends. They were full of energy and dreamed of the adventures that awaited them behind every tree. Brian, engrossed in playing and laughing, wandered deep into the forest without noticing his friends had gone ahead. Soon he realized he was lost. The forest was beautiful and mysterious. Trees with brightly colored leaves created a magical atmosphere, and a light breeze whispered its secrets. Brian enjoyed the fresh air and the sounds of nature, birds chirping and leaves rustling under his feet. But soon his joy was replaced by anxiety. He began to call out to his friends, but the answer was silence. The boy's heart beat faster as he realized that he was alone in this vast forest. Brian began to panic. He called out to his friends over and over again, but no one answered. There was silence all around him, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant sounds of animals. The boy felt fear gripping his heart. He was alone and helpless. Determined not to waste any time, he decided to walk forward, hoping to find his way back home. With each step, the forest became more and more unfriendly. The dark shadows of the trees seemed threatening, and the sounds of distant animals gave him goosebumps. Brian stopped and sat down on a tree root to collect his thoughts. He knew he had to stay calm and not panic. It was the only solution in this situation. Meanwhile, there was a lone wolf named Ragnar living in the forest. He watched the boy from behind the trees and noticed his frightened face. Ragnar realized that Brian was lost and was filled with curiosity about this man, someone who was in his world. Suddenly, Brian heard a noise behind him. It was a pack of wild boars that had spotted him and began to approach with a threatening growl. The boy froze with fear. He did not know what to do in such a situation. At that moment, Ragnar came out from behind the trees and stood between Brian and the boars. He roared so loudly and threateningly that the boars stopped in their tracks in surprise. The wolf took a step forward, showing his sharp teeth. He was ready to protect the boy at any cost. The boars hesitated. They had clearly not expected such an opponent, but then one of them dared to attack Ragnar. The wolf reacted instantly. He lunged at the boar with such force that it bounced back and soon turned around with the rest of the pack. Brian watched this with his mouth open. He couldn't believe his eyes. The wolf had protected him. When the danger had passed, Ragnar returned to Brian and sat down beside him. The boy was still trembling with fear, but now he felt safe next to this amazing creature. "Thank you," he said quietly, reaching out his hand to the wolf. Ragnar tilted his head sideways and looked at the boy carefully with his intelligent eyes. It was a moment of understanding between them. They both knew they needed each other. Brian remembered his friends and how they always talked about wolves being dangerous. But now he understood. This wolf was his protector, a creature of kindness and courage. Brian felt a surge of confidence and decided to follow Ragnar. He hoped that he would help him find his way back home. The wolf began to move through the forest with confidence. The boy followed him with hope. Along the way, they met many animals, hares and squirrels. Each time, Ragnar stopped and showed Brian the beauty of the forest, how important it is to take care of nature and respect its inhabitants. "Look," said Brian enthusiastically, pointing to a squirrel that was deftly jumping on the branches of the trees. Ragnar looked at the squirrel with interest. He had never seen a human being so close to nature. However, they soon encountered a new threat, a pack of foxes that looked hungry and aggressive. The foxes began to surround them on all sides with their sly looks. Brian felt fear again. What should we do? Ragnar stepped confidently between the boy and the foxes. His fur heaved with tension. He roared so loudly that even Brian shuddered at the sound. It was a warning to the foxes. They froze in place. They realized confronting such a strong opponent was a bad idea. Ragnar took a step forward and showed his strength. The foxes quickly turned and ran away in search of easier prey. "You are a true protector," Brian said admiringly after the danger had passed. Ragnar raised his head proudly. He felt important to this man, to his new friend. After a long journey, they finally came to a familiar glade. It was the same glade where Brian had played with his friends before he got lost. The boy shouted with joy, "I found the way." He turned to Ragnar. "Thank you, you saved me." The wolf looked at him with pride. He realized that their bond had become something more, a true friendship between man and wild animal. Brian slowly approached Ragnar. "I will never forget you." Ragnar roared quietly in response. It was a sound of approval. The boy returned home with a heart full of joy and gratitude for his new friend. But when he came home to his parents, they were very concerned about his absence. "Where have you been? We have been looking for you everywhere," Mom asked with concern in her voice. Brian told them about his adventures in the forest and how the wolf had saved him from danger. His parents didn't believe him at first. "Wolves are dangerous. You must be careful." But Brian had confidence in his friend Ragnar. He knew he was a kind creature. From then on, Brian often came to the clearing, hoping to see his savior again. Each time he brought treats for his friend, bits of meat or bread from home. One day he came to the clearing early in the morning. The sun was just beginning to rise above the horizon. The forest was filled with a soft golden-colored light. The morning rays broke through the leaves of the trees, creating amazing patterns on the ground. Brian sat down on the grass among the flowers and waited impatiently for his friend. Several hours passed. The boy began to doubt whether Ragnar would come today or not, but suddenly a familiar figure appeared from behind the trees. Ragnar emerged from the shadows of the trees. His eyes shone with joy at the sight of the boy after the long wait. They had met again. With each visit, their friendship grew stronger. Each time they discovered new facets of this wonderful world around them. Brian learned many things from Ragnar: how to find food in the forest, or how to recognize animal tracks on the ground by the soft ground beneath their feet. One day they came across a small river. "Look, you can catch fish here," said Brian cheerfully, and sat down at the water's edge to watch the silver-colored fish swimming in the sunlight. Ragnar moved closer to the water. He too was interested in those small creatures under the surface of the water, their quick movements as they played with each other. "What do you think? Can we catch one?" the boy asked cheerfully. The wolf looked at him with his clever eyes. It seemed as if he were laughing at the idea. Brian tried to catch the fish with his hands. It was difficult. The fish quickly ran away from him at every movement of his hands or even the slightest rustle of grass around them. Then Ragnar came closer to the water, carefully lowering his paws, began to catch fish with his nose with all his predator's agility. The boy had fun watching this process. Soon he managed to catch several small fish. They decided to have a picnic right by the river, enjoying the fresh air amidst the greenery of nature around them, sharing stories of their adventures with each other. However, they soon encountered a new threat: a hunter. One day during their walk through the woods, they heard the sound of a gunshot in the distance. The sharp sound broke the silence of the surroundings. Brian was frightened. What was that? Ragnar became alert. His instincts told him to be careful. They needed to hide until the danger was gone. They decided to hide behind the bushes until the hunter moved away from them without paying attention to where each other were hiding. The boy breathed a sigh of relief when the hunter passed them without any suspicion. "We must be more careful. It could happen again." Ragnar agreed. Now they knew how dangerous the world around them was. A world full of threats to fragile creatures like man or wild beast. It had been several months since Brian and the wolf had become inseparable friends. Every day they explored the forest, sharing their joy and discovering new parts of nature. Brian felt like Ragnar had become a part of his life, and he couldn't imagine being without him. One day, as they walked along familiar paths, Brian noticed that the wolf had become more wary. Ragnar often stopped and listened to the sounds of the forest. The boy sensed something was wrong. "Are you all right?" he asked, leaning over to his friend. The wolf looked at him with his deep eyes full of wisdom and sadness. He knew it was time to say goodbye. There were hunters in the forest, and Ragnar realized that his place was among the wild animals, not near man. The next day, Brian came to the clearing with treats for Ragnar. He was full of hope to see his friend, but the wolf was not there. The boy waited for hours, but never saw him. The sun began to set over the horizon, coloring the sky in bright shades of orange and purple. Brian felt a chill in his heart. He knew this could be goodbye. "Ragnar," he shouted hopefully, "where are you?" But his answer was only the silence of the forest. Tears came to the boy's eyes. He realized that their friendship was unique and beautiful, but also fragile. A few days later, Brian came to the clearing again. He sat down on the grass and closed his eyes, remembering all the moments of happiness with Ragnar, their adventures together, lessons about nature, and the protection the wolf had given him in times of need. He decided to leave a small token of friendship in the clearing, a stone with a carved heart. It was his farewell message for his friend. "I will never forget you," he whispered through his tears. From then on, Brian came to the clearing often. He continued to learn from nature and share his knowledge with the other children of the village. He told them about his wolf friend and the importance of taking care of nature and respecting its inhabitants. Although Ragnar was no longer around, his spirit lived on in Brent's heart. The boy understood that true friendship never fades. It stays with us forever in the memories and lessons of life. And every time he heard the rustle of leaves or felt the wind on his face, it seemed to him that it was his friend, a wolf, who would always be there for him in his soul. Translate it with deepl.com, free version,